Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. This is a reflective episode. I don't think I did this last year on my podcast, but I think I might create it as a tradition for the future. I used to do this in blog form where I would do an annual recap in December for my photography business and tell all about the couples that I had photographed for their weddings, the business owners that I supported through branding photography. And although this one is a little bit more centered around me and my growth, I think that the same sentiment stands that there's just been a lot to be celebrated this year and a lot of challenges too, but mostly stuff to be celebrated. And so I want to reflect on 2025 and take some lessons into 2026 with me. And I hope that this reflection helps another small business owner, another short-term rental owner. And even if it's been a hard year for you, I want you to know that you're not alone in that. And so let's just dive right in. Every single podcast episode, I, at the very least, create an outline for it. And I did do that for this episode. And I tried to determine whether the flow of this episode would be best by category, talking all about the podcast first and then short-term rentals second, or if it was best to go in chronological order. But everything kind of just flows into everything else. So I'm going to do my best to go in chronological order, but if I skip ahead in the year, then just know that I'll at least circle back. So let's first talk about the rebrand that I underwent at the early part of 2025. I did an entire episode about the rebrand in the past, and it was a full-on rebrand. I changed the name of my business, I changed my logo, I changed my ideal client who I was marketing towards, I changed everything. So I guess I had unrealistic expectations of how quickly that change was going to flow down to my actual audience. And what I mean by that is I thought that I was going to see the results of that rebrand much quicker than I did. So I changed my business name to Brand and Market. I changed the podcast name to the Brand and Market Podcast because previously my business had just been known by my name. It was the Allie Ray Haney Show. My handle was Allie Ray Haney on social media. And I wanted to move more away from a personal brand, which is a little bit contrarian. I feel like a lot of people are circling back or gravitating towards having a personal brand. But I wanted to go more the agency route for branding and marketing. I was planning on bringing on a white label designer under me to do the actual brand design. I would be performing brand strategy, then passing the design portion off to a designer. And same for website. I would be doing the website mock-up and outline, sitemap, and then handing it off to a designer to design and develop. And so I was trying to pull away from my name being the face of the business because I didn't want to be I didn't want the expectation of it was always going to be me that you were working with. When I went through that rebrand, I was still nailing down the audience that I wanted to speak to. I actually vividly remember I chose to work with another brand designer because I didn't know that I just felt like I was too close to the project and I needed some outside feedback. I got some outside feedback from them, but I was still wanting to market towards creative entrepreneurs, which was the world that I had previously come from, and B, real estate related industries. So short-term rental owners, realtors, construction companies, contractors, because I had done and dabbled in that quite a bit before. I was trying to ride what's the phrase? Trying to ride two horses with one ass. So I had to choose a horse that I wanted to ride, right? Whether it was going to be the creative entrepreneur route or the short-term rental owner route. The short-term rental owner route became the path that I started to follow because that was the content that came most easily to me. So then after that large rebrand where I was redesigning my own website, got new brand visuals, implemented a new brand strategy, I was then honing in a little bit more and just distilling it down to what it needed to be in order to be successful because I wasn't listening to my own advice. I tell everyone to have their one ideal client avatar and tailor all of your messaging directly towards that person. And I wasn't doing that. So once I was able to really nail down that not only did I want to work with real estate related industries, but more specifically, I wanted to work with short-term rental owners because I am an owner and operator of them. It helped me get to know my ideal client really well because I had many of the characteristics of my ideal client. I wanted to touch on that if you go through a rebrand and you still feel like something's just slightly off, it's okay. It's probably just 1 or 2 tweaks away from being perfect. So now I feel much more confident in the audience that I'm trying to attract, who I'm speaking to, and that has really filtered down to other parts of my business, specifically the podcast. I'm going to dive deep into the podcast in a second, but just kind of put a pin in that for now. The next thing that I did early on in the year was I hired a VA, and I never really had done that in the past. I had attempted to, but I didn't have really solid SOPs to be able to hand off to a VA. And I knew that the podcast was going to be a focus for 2025 because I had hired a podcast producer. Shout out to Haley Gaffin of Gaffin Creative, who has been with me this entire year, and we have not missed a single weekly episode in all of 2025. That might not sound like a big deal to some people, but for me as a mother of 3 kids, 7, 5, and 3, a wife of someone who works a full-time W-2, is also in the reserves and runs my own business, that's a big freaking deal. I'm really proud of myself for that. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that and celebrate that win. But I couldn't have done it without her. I knew, however, that of course, even if I put this content out, long form content in the form of a podcast, that no one's going to see it unless I market it. The main task that I had the VA do was to market the podcast. You may have noticed that earlier in the year, I was putting out a lot of video content, multiple reels per week, which is an increase in social media content creation for me and my usual cadence. And that was because when I doubled down on hiring Haley as my producer and doubled down on the long form content creation as my podcast, I knew that I wanted to do it justice by being able to market it and market it well. So I did something that was a little bit unorthodox. And when I hired that VA, I created, this part's not unorthodox. I created SOPs, did the Loom videos of like how to log into everything, how to specifically post, what keywords we were trying to go for or we thought we were going for at the time. I've really honed in on the systems that it took to allow her to be successful in her role. But then my kind of outside of the box idea to create the content was to rent local Airbnbs in the Raleigh area, which is where I live, and create content with and for those owners as well while I was making my own content to produce my own podcast. I enjoyed that. I felt like we got better at it as the year went on. We did it every month from March till I believe it was September or October. So we did it for 6 or 7 months. And I saw an uptick in my engagement because some of them were like just B-roll reels, but others were very specific, like on trend reels. And I was able to keep up with that because I had a monthly content day set aside where that was legit. The only thing we were doing was recording content for the upcoming month and for the podcast episodes that we were planning to promote. What we eventually found was that even when we went in with strategy, a lot of the content that we were creating ended up being B-roll. And B-roll can be created literally anywhere, in my own house, in a coffee shop. I didn't need to be putting out the money to rent the Airbnb or to pay her hourly for that time to be there with me in order to get the same content that I was getting at the Airbnbs. Kind of an ulterior motive of shooting at those Airbnbs was to see if I could make a warm lead out of a host if they needed a co-host. And I was not able to capture any of those as leads as a co-host. So I was like, okay, it's not working. It's working on the marketing front, but we found kind of a hack that really what we need is B-roll, not specifically content like made in an Airbnb. And B, it wasn't working for the co-hosting lead side of things. So we took that and we stopped doing the monthly content creation days in October. Funny enough, because we stopped doing the content creation days in October, we no longer had a solid plan for the content that we wanted to create for each individual episode to promote it. So therefore, the content slowed down. We still did our regular blogs. We still did like the carousel posts and stuff, like introducing the guest or introducing the solo episode topic, but there was not much creativity behind it. It was more just a like assembly line, so to speak, to get the marketing material out. And it wasn't as captivating, engaging. Since then, I've had a changeover in VA, and I am working on honing in on those SOPs even more to be able to figure out what our next moves are in terms of marketing the podcast. I'm really, really excited to have to think outside the box because this VA, she's not local to me. She is based out of Tennessee. So I have to think, how am I going to create the content or the B-roll or the reels and send her the videos to be able to keep that like cadence alive, if that makes sense. So revisiting that, reworking that, but I think I did pretty well in giving myself permission to evolve throughout the year with that process. We went in with a goal, we achieved the goal, and now we have more data to inform our decisions as we move forward with marketing material for the podcast. Hiring a VA and hiring a podcast producer, those were two big changes in 2025 that taught me a lot. Okay, so now that brings me to end of Q1 of this year. And I cannot get through this year without talking about Level Up Your Listing Summit. Level Up Your Listing Summit is a 3-day summit in Phoenix, Arizona, geared towards short-term rental owners and operators or anybody within that short-term rental space. So when I went to Level Up Your Listing, I went with the idea in mind that I was trying to get leads for brand and market, the agency. And it was interesting that I did it that way because in my mind at that point, we were still planning on selling the Commonwealth, which is our Kentucky Airbnb on the Bourbon Trail. So I wasn't looking really to optimize that property because that property wasn't going to be ours for very long. And at that time, we had absolutely zero plans of purchasing another short-term rental. Once I went to Level Up Your Listing Summit, and I can back up for a second here, I heard about Level Up Your Listing Summit about 4 weeks before the actual event. I looked at Caleb and I was like, I think this is a room that I need to be in. I know it's a little bit of an inconvenience to our family. Can we figure this out so that I can get to Phoenix for 3 days? And I went to that event. He took off work, watched the kids. I went to that event and knew no one. I walked out with a network. I walked out with connections that have brought me not only income, but also just a community. And I still talk to some of those connections weekly, if not, a couple of times a week. And one of those connections actually was I needed her throughout the process of acquiring Luna. She really helped me with finding a lender. She helped me throughout like knowing what I should have looked at on the inspection report, like all of those things, because she's a realtor in Maryland. So it was just a great connection that I made there. And then at the end, they have a Rising Stars panel that they do each year at Level Up Your Listing. And that basically is like if you come 2 years in a row, they watch their attendees throughout the year in between the annual event, and they see that you're doing big things for your business. Then they'll pull you as a surprise on the Rising Stars panel to interview you and ask about like what you're doing with your business. So that was a really cool, gave me a bar to strive for, a goal to strive for. And so at the very end of the summit, like everybody was kind of filtering out, saying their goodbyes. The vendors were all packing up. It was kind of like a flurry of motion. And I was able to kind of pull Natalie, the co-founder of Level Up, aside and say, thank you so much. First I thanked her for hosting the event and being so raw and real in her keynote, which she was. But then I was like, mark my words, I will be on that Rising Stars panel next year. And that was a bold move for me. I'm not usually that bold, but for whatever reason, being in Phoenix by myself and having kind of some mental mindset shifts while at the event, I went for it. Then I came home, I did an entire breaking news podcast about all of the breakthroughs that I had while I was at Level Up. And ultimately, like I said, I'm going to jump forward in timeline, but I joined Natalie's coaching program called Host Like a Mother that helps you optimize properties and also expand co-hosting businesses if you so please. And so I was like, I'm going to get on this woman's radar. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be on that Rising Stars panel because I love a good goal to achieve. I love something to cross off my list. And so that's exactly what I did. And by the end of the year, she asked me to be on one of her or on her podcast, which is a top rated podcast in the short-term rental industry space. And I got to talk A, about the Commonwealth, and B, about branding and marketing and how important it is for your short-term rental to have it. It was an incredible opportunity for me. I shot the shot and made it. And I would love to, I don't know if I'm going to be a rising star next year or not, but I'll let you know in March. Keep tuning in. It was just a big moment for me. Level Up was a turning point for me because as soon as I came home from Level Up, I knew that I wanted to double down in our own short-term rental portfolio and not just be the service provider who is doing the branding and marketing for other short-term rentals. So I found this like random, I have so many realtor.com searches saved on my phone. So I get notifications every single day of new properties, some raw land, some with structures on them all over the country, places in North Carolina, places in Virginia, places in Kentucky, all the places that I'm already familiar with. But all that to say, this piece of property while I was at Level Up Your Listing came across my phone and it was 10 acres, had like a creek running through it, it was like almost part of the intercoastal waterway in a small town of Eastern North Carolina. I said, Caleb, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I've got like this fire lit under my ass after going to Level Up. And can we go drive 2 hours to go look at this property in Bayboro, North Carolina? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so we went. It was great to be able to dream again after Kentucky and the wedding venue debacle. And it was just that permission that I needed that I got from Level Up to be able to really take steps forward in the short-term rental or micro resort journey. That property ended up not being a good fit. Most of it was like flood zone marshland. That's why it was so cheap. But it was nice to at least get the ball rolling again, having motion forward towards your dream again. So that was a pivotal moment in the year for me as well. Now we're going to jump forward to like June-ish timeframe. And that's when I started Host Like a Mother, the coaching program with Natalie Palmer, co-founder of Level Up Your Listing. And the biggest thing that I learned there, or the biggest like turning point there, I guess, was that we decided actually to keep the Commonwealth instead of sell it. Those of you who don't know about the Commonwealth, it is on 90 acres. It has 3 structures on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky, so 45 minutes outside of Louisville, 25 minutes north of Bardstown, the bourbon capital of the world, 45 minutes from Frankfort and Lawrenceburg, where Woodford Reserve and Wild Turkey are, like Distillery Central, okay? And it's a large estate, 5-bed, 5.5 bath, so perfect for any like groups of couples that are going, sometimes extended family, but mostly we get older couples that are coming for like an annual trip to cross the Bourbon Trail off the bucket list. We've actually been able to convert some of those guests into annual guests. So it went from being a bucket list trip to an annual trip back to our house, which I absolutely love. Every quarter or so, I do just a pulse check on the area that we are in Kentucky to see if there's any competition coming into the area. And for the last 2.5 years that it's been a short-term rental, we've not had any competition. Maybe one other house that has the same amount of bedrooms as us. And it's actually, funny enough, less than a mile from our house, which is crazy because we are very, very rural. When I say we're in between Louisville and Bardstown, there's like not much in between those two places. There's this one other lake house that had been just very subtly on my radar, but never posed any competition in terms of architecture, in terms of design, in terms of furnishings. We've got double staircases and marble floors, and every bedroom has a bathroom. The other place was like an old 80s lake house. So it was competition in the specs. It was not competition in design or reality. That sounds harsh, sorry. But then when I did my quarterly market research and saw, oh shit, now we have about 3 or 4 other rentals that have come on in the last quarter that rival us in space and amenities. We were kind of coasting off of the fact that the home itself, the estate itself, was just beautiful. We didn't have a hot tub. We don't have a sauna. We don't have a pickleball court. Like all of the amenities that you normally think of when you think of like a luxury Airbnb, we didn't really have. But suddenly I saw this one place had a whole bar in a barn. Like they had the indoor like putt-putt golf, they had pickleball courts, some had out of ground or in-ground pools, some had saunas and hot tubs. And I'm like, holy moly, where did these guys come from within the last it max 6 months? So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's two ways I could have played it, right? Like I'm going to get out because there's so much more competition, or I'm going to, for lack of a better term, level up the listing so that I can now compete with them, because these bigger investors, one of which like is so deep in the short-term rental community, like he's a big name in the short-term rental community, and he just opened one on the Bourbon Trail. It's reinforcing what I thought I saw 3 years ago in the growth of the Bourbon Trail. Now this is confirming what I knew I saw 3 years ago. So instead of selling it and getting the hell out of Dodge, we're again doubling down, staying put, and reinvesting back into this property that's already making good money. We increased the level or the attractiveness of the interior design. We got some new furniture for specific rooms that needed it. We revisited our amenity strategy. So we added a hot tub. We have plans of adding a pickleball court and potentially a sauna in that house. And it was nice to be able to like take those baby steps. And then also nice to be reassured that, like I said, what we saw 3 years ago is right. Like people are finally catching up now. I had this little gold mine off to myself on the Bourbon Trail, and now I have to like rethink my strategy a little bit. I can't just coast on the beauty of the architecture. But even so, it's interesting that as I was looking up the competition or the competitive listings, like they are targeting a far different guest than who I'm targeting. And so I actually kind of love that strategy because they're bringing awareness to the area, but they're not trying to pull from my clientele. Because a lot of the newer listings have louder, bolder, brighter, kitschier, even some of them, design, and they're going all in on the horses. And it's just a lot. Like everything is a bourbon barrel wood wall, or there are horses everywhere on a whole room. And my audience doesn't go for that. Like my audience is the 50 plus crowd of 4 to 5 couples that want a relaxing, elegant, luxurious getaway. It's not the people that are looking for like the loud design. It was nice to give myself a little bit of clarity throughout Level Up Your Listing too. And Natalie was one of the ones that helped me through that coaching program identify what my like top tier amenities should be moving forward to continue to stay competitive and increase our ADR. So that was one of the main takeaways that I took from that coaching program. And the second main takeaway was that the way that I could differentiate myself within a co-hosting business is that I am the one not only that co-hosts and is guest facing with the guest communication and, scheduling cleaners and contractors, but I also make sure that the brand is consistent, the marketing is consistent, because oftentimes short-term rental owners will invest in a beautiful visual brand. They'll have the logo, they'll buy the water bottle covers, or they'll buy mugs with their logo, but is not necessarily being utilized by the co-hosting company or the property management company. So the benefit, or my UVP, is bringing both of those under one house. I'm able to create the brand. I understand the significance of the brand. I can make sure that that brand is cohesive across every point of the client experience. It was really great to have those two like light bulb moments, one for our own short-term rentals and two for my service-based business. So that was a huge growing point in my year of 2025. This brings me to my next coaching program that I joined, which was with my podcast producer, Haley Gaffin of Gaffin Creative. She did her beta podcast growth program through September through November. So it was a 3-month program. It is now transitioned its name to the Soundboard Society. I was a little bit hesitant on how I could do better with the podcast before I joined her program, because I felt like I was, again, like honing in on my content a little bit, like narrowing it down to what my ideal audience would want to hear. But it was like I didn't have next steps. I was just kind of coasting at that point. Okay, so one of the first things that she did was have us audit our content. So I did do that. And like I said, I was already on the right path, but I really, really honed in on it with some of the strategies that she gave me in the podcast growth program to be able to distill it even more into what our audience wants to hear as short-term rental owners and operators. And then from there, we dissected some potential keywords to try and rank for. Just a little bit of background. Ranking on like Google with SEO is a little bit different than ranking within the like podcast player space. Still similar principles, but it's a little bit easier to do it in the podcast player space because there's not quite as much saturation. So she really helped me go through and determine what those keywords should be for us. As soon as she went through and told me those, I started creating content around those, but she also optimized my previous content to try and rank for those. So it was content that I had already created. I had put the effort in already, and she was helping me bring that content to the viewers that wanted to see it. And within like 2 weeks, we were ranking at the top for Airbnb social media. I was just like astounded that my download numbers started to creep up and up and up. Then she had a whole segment on how to monetize your podcast. And I am still working towards being able to do that outside of just affiliate commission from the ads that are in the podcast. But the next goal would be to get a sponsor for the podcast. She gave me a number to strive for, downloads per episode. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm headed. I have increased. This is like second big win that like shout out to Haley for coaching me into being able to do this within the last 90 days. So to give you an idea, that program was set, like I think it was mid-September to mid-November. Right now I'm recording this the first week of December. And within the last 90 days, so pretty much the duration, we're like 2 or a month into her program. Within the last 90 days, my listenership has increased by 225%. Just let that sink in. Absolutely wild growth in just 3 months from taking the content that I had already created, putting it in front of the people that actually want to hear it, honing in on the content that I was already creating and making it even more poignant to the people that need to hear it. Like it was just small tweaks that like I would have never known that I needed to do had I not joined that coaching program. So the podcast in and of itself is going to see again, like I have high hopes for 2026 for major growth. This was the year overall that I felt like I was like realigning myself and getting my shit straight. And now I can put my foot on the gas and be able to like take off in 2026. So I'm going to manifest it, declare it. I don't know what that verb is. I will have a sponsor for this podcast by the end of 2026. I'm very excited to continue to monetize and strategize. Just, it's so funny how small tweaks can really like improve the overall strategy for a podcast. So if you're struggling with that, A, being consistent, B, having strategy behind the keywords that you're using, C, like figuring out what content to actually put out, I highly recommend you schedule a free call with Haley. She does free consult calls just to see where you are. Soundboard Society is for established podcasters. So if you have a podcast you're looking to monetize and strategize, like get on a call with her. She will dump some knowledge on you and some insights that like you don't know what you don't know. She knows because she's been in the podcast world for years and years and has her own podcast as well. So she walks the walk and talks the talk, literally hours behind a mic, just like us. So I encourage you to seek her out. So let's do, we're going to stay on the timeline and I'm going to bring you to around November. It was during Host Like a Mother that I started to do the design and the amenity strategy for the Commonwealth, the property in Kentucky. It was beginning of November that we actually implemented those changes. So the first week of November, we were in there. I don't hang wallpaper, and we actually hired a painter for that to paint the rooms upstairs that we were redoing. We were there just doing the overall maintenance. I hired an electrician to be able to run the electric out to the hot tub. We put together a shit ton of furniture. One room got an entire makeover, paint, wallpaper, furniture. Both bathrooms two of the upstairs bathrooms got new paint. Like it was just a very real transition and like, okay, now we're taking this seriously. If you guys know part of my story, we've owned 2 short-term rentals. I co-host another one. We just closed on the third one that we own. The first 2 actually, the first North Carolina house and the Commonwealth, they were never intended to be short-term rentals. We ended up doing them, like creating them into short-term rentals because it was a last-ditch effort to be able to keep the property and make revenue off the property. Fast forward to this year, this is the first year that we've actually started investing into short-term rentals with the purpose of it being a short-term rental. But all of that, to bring you back to the Commonwealth, it was just fun to see the transition and the transformation that this property has seen since we've had it. We've owned it for about 4 years now. And the first year was really focused on becoming a wedding venue. The second year was then getting up and running for the Airbnb as we were living on property in a very small home with our 2 children at the time, welcomed our third at that same year. And then these last 2 years have been kind of just coasting, like I mentioned before, but now putting in the effort and giving it the time and the attention it deserves. Like, it's just a really cool transformation to see. So the Commonwealth got some updates, and then that was in like early November. And now I'm skipping back to September. And September was when we first saw, I guess it was late August, when we first saw Luna, which is the potential new micro resort that we are starting. That is in Southern Virginia, Fancy Gap, Virginia, right off the Blue Ridge Parkway. We ended up staying in that property before we put an offer on it. I actually have a whole multi-part series about the pre-acquisition, pre-offer part, under contract portion of that experience, and then the post-closing portion of that experience. So you should go check that series out. That has been just a fun project. We closed on that November 7th, but it was like the month of October that we were going through all of the due diligence period and the inspections and all of that. And there's so many lessons to be told for Luna, but if I'm going to go high level, I would say definitely invest in the brand. If you're starting a short-term rental, please show the process behind getting it started. That people love that content on social media. We've grown the account is still small for Stay at Elysian, at Stay at Elysian. You should go check it out. That's the one that we set up for the potential new micro resort. And then the individual unit that we're working on right now is Luna. It's the first one that's already there. It's a geodesic dome. But people love seeing the process. And in addition to that, we also have started a wait list for Luna so that when we do go live, we have those warm leads ready to go and ready to book, because everybody knows it's a big financial commitment to start up a short-term rental. So, we're putting down the down payment. We are furnishing it. We are doing some renovations, painting in new floors. Like, of course, inevitable things pop up, like replacing a dishwasher or a new refrigerator, buying new TVs or mattresses that you thought you already had because it was a furnished purchase. So it's just like knowing that you have those warm leads in the pipeline to be able to book and have income, like absolutely freaking priceless. So that would be probably my biggest pointer or piece of advice. If you are purchasing a new short-term rental, start that waitlist now. That has been a really fun project that I'm able to be creative on. And sometimes as we were there the whole week of Thanksgiving, getting it painted and giving her a glow up, I had a couple of moments where I would look out to the fire pit, and there between the house and the fire pit, there's this creek and bridge. And I was like, this is ours. I looked at Caleb and I was like, we get to bring the kids here like whenever we want. It feels a little surreal. Like seeing the way that our kids enjoy it, just naturally. We haven't done many of the updates that we want to do. We haven't added the stargazing dome. We haven't added the hot tub. Like, it just is what it is right now. And they're still enjoying it the way that I imagine other families and other kids enjoying it. And it brings a little bit of I'm going to try not to get emotional. Brings a little bit of a tear to my eye because we didn't get to capitalize on the dream that we had in Kentucky. And then this property, after all of these like pieces of the puzzle throughout 2025, from level up your listing to host like a mother to the podcast growth, like all of those things, like leading me to this moment to find Luna. And it's just been really incredible to see the transformation. Again, big transformational year here for the Commonwealth, for Luna, for me, for the podcast. The final thing that I want to touch on is the last bit of education that I invested in 2025. That is a mastermind program called Action Academy. So Action Academy, I learned about it probably earlier this year, so early 2025, through my friend Trisha Capone. She has her own property management business. She is in the process of investing in a boutique hotel, or potentially two. They've been in and out of contracts this whole year, but it's just so like she'd been kind of getting me to like recruit me for the Action Academy program for a while. And I was just like, I don't think I fit it. I was reading the messaging through the website and following the founders' social media. And it was all about leaving your W-2 and replacing that W-2 income with small business acquisition or commercial real estate. I've been running my own business for years now. Like, I'm not that person. I'm not who they're looking for. Like, I thought I wasn't a good fit. She was like, no, you're perfect. You're perfect. Come on, join me. Max and I, her husband, she's like, we love it. We found our partners in multiple deals here. Like, we are moving halfway across the country because of the connections we made in Action Academy. It will change your life. And so I was on the fence about it. And then they did the Black Friday deal. Damn it, Brian Lubin. You hooked me in with the Black Friday deal. I couldn't say no. I got on a sales call. And to be honest, I was a little bit like I had my guard up during the sales call and was like in my head, still had like a little bit of skepticism around it. But then I got off the sales call and there was immediate follow-up, which I loved. I started talking to Trisha, asked her some of my like more in-depth questions, I guess, that I wouldn't just ask on the sales call to the guy that I don't know versus Trisha, who I went to college with. Asked her some of the questions. And then funny enough, I approached Caleb with it. And it was a pretty big investment. I'm going to say it was $15,000. I'll just put it out there. It was $15,000 for lifetime access to Action Academy versus it being like, I think it was $7,000 or $8,000 each year. And Trisha was like, before she even knew about the Black Friday deal, she was trying to recruit me for it. She was like, I pay it no brainer every single year because of how much it has changed my life. I will be an Action Academy member for life. I don't care how much I have to pay for it. It's been an incredible community to be a part of. So I took the leap amidst, putting the down payment on for Luna, furnishing Luna. I'm like, I got to figure it out. But the funny part about it is like, I have been primed for this. I knew how much the annual subscription was. I've known since the beginning, like when Trisha first mentioned it to me earlier this year. And so it's been on my mind as a potential expense for close to 9 months. But then I approached Caleb with it. Now the fee has almost doubled. Granted, it is for lifetime access, but to him, I'm just, pitching him another $15,000 expense after we just put down a down payment, furnished a house and all the things, right? He was like, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not sure. And then I started to try and explain it to him. I showed him some of Trisha's text messages and he was like, if you think this is the path, then I'm going to trust you. And I was like, oh, okay, we're doing it. We're doing it. I jumped in and that was about 2 weeks ago. I've done over 8 or 9, maybe 10 connection calls since then. And the program has been really, really helpful. And I haven't even really jumped into the actual education portion of it yet. I've been really focusing on the personal relationships connection calls. I think the shortest connection call I had was like 35 or 40 minutes. Like people actually sit down and give you so much time. And the thing is, the reason that I was kind of on the fence was that I thought I wasn't far along enough in the journey to be taken seriously yet in terms of like real estate investing. And we didn't really have we don't have a plan or an idea to do any types of small business acquisition. But even just within the 2 weeks of us being in this group, it shows me that there are places that we can develop in our life and our businesses that's going to make not only our lives easier, but also be able to make us money. And so it's been interesting learning more about small business acquisition, which was not something that was on my radar before. But they created a very compelling case that a lot of owners are willing to owner finance. And so the first, objection that I had was not that I can't run a business. I can clearly run a business, but it was the capital behind running a business. And so creative financing that they were opening my eyes to within this program, as well as the access to capital within this program. I mean, 30 to 40% of the members are there to be capital investors, mostly passive, and are just looking for an operator to operate the business so that they can cash out and get their payouts. So it is an incredible community to be a part of. I'm only 2 weeks in, and I'm so grateful that I did the lifetime access because I feel like I've already grown within my own business just by being in proximity to people who have such big dreams, to people who understand living a lifestyle outside of the W-2. I even approached the subject with Caleb, would you ever leave your W-2 and come work with me? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. So that's been a really fun conversation to have between the two of us as we, continue to put down roots here and grow our life and our business here in North Carolina. So it's been a fun year. Like I said, 2025 was the year of realignment. 2026 is the year where I put the gas to the pedal and we just go. I see that happening already with the increase in, the downloads for the podcast. I see that already in getting Luna set up. I see that already in that we have multiple reservations for 2026 throughout the year, including previous guests that are contacting me to book a year in advance. So it's just fun to see the seeds that I've planted throughout 2025 growing into beautiful flowers for 2026. So I am grateful that you're here. If you're still listening at 45 minutes in, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And if there's any way that I can help you grow your dreams in 2026, please let me know, whether that's creating a brand for your short-term rental, helping you set up that wait list for a short-term rental that you're about to purchase, co-hosting your property if you want to be more hands-off. Let me know. Please just slide into my DMs at brandonmarket.co. And if you are looking to grow your portfolio in 2026, I just created this awesome freebie that I did live as we were going through the acquisition process for Luna. So because that process was so fresh in my mind, I sat down and wrote a checklist for anyone that's looking to acquire a short-term rental for every part of the process from pre-offer to post-closing. So I'm going to link that in the show notes, as well as a link to schedule a consult call with me. That consult call is totally free. I end up spending, although I allot 30 minutes, it's usually closer to 40 or 45 because even if I can't help you, I want to give you value in some way on those calls. So please, 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 if you have something that you want to talk about, book that consult call and I am here to support you in 2026. Let's go. You just completed another episode of the Brandon Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.